Serenbe is a place where people live, work, learn, and play in celebration of life's beauty. And we're here to share the stories that connect residents and guests to each other and to nature. This is Serenbe Stories. Welcome back to Serenbe Stories. For today, I want to welcome Steve back.
Thank you, Monica.
And our special guest for today, Robert Rausch. But first, Serenbe Stories is brought to you by The Inn at Serenbe. The Inn is nestled in the rolling countryside of bucolic Serenbe, where guests can walk on the 15 miles of trails through preserved forest land, the wildflower meadow, and the animal village. You can relax by the pool, hot tub, or in rocking chairs on wraparound porch. Play on the croquet lawn, swings, and in-ground trampolines. Connect with nature and each other, all while staying in luxurious rooms on the inn grounds or within the community of Serenbe. Book your stay today at serenbeinn.com. Robert is a longtime friend of Serenbe's and a well-known artist. So welcome, Robert. And Robert's on the phone with us today from Alabama.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Glad to chat with you today, Robert.
So, Robert, I know all about the work that you've done at Serenbe. Tons of different art projects, from the original marketing box to our lampposts to... Gosh.
Well, just the other day, there was an old file that I was going through things, and I brought it in to show Monica. In fact, I had almost forgotten it. In fact, I had forgotten it. I don't know if you remember, Robert, it was a wonderful introduction and invitation to our street lighting. And it was that wonderful slip out that you had. We'll have to put a picture of it on the webpage when this... And it shows this whole scene as you slipped it out. And it was just this wonderful...
Right. It was like a drawing of the lamppost. Mm-hmm. And then when you pulled it out, it resolved into a photo of the lamppost installed in the first neighborhood cell.
It just reminded me of all the incredible magic that you do that we've even tucked away and forgotten about.
I know. And Robert, I don't know how you... originally met Steve. Can you share that story? Or Steve, can you share that story? Because it must have been a long time before Serenbe, because I know, you guys have had an incredible relationship for years, which I feel like possibly involves Ryan Gainey.
Absolutely. I think the first time we met was in Ryan's garden for his birthday party or something, Robert. Do you remember the occasion?
Yes, I think it was 4th of July party that he had.
Okay.
And you and Marie came, and that's the first time I met y'all.
Yeah, and was that something that he did on a regular basis, his 4th of July party, or? Yeah,
he had a big 4th of July party. I mean, but I didn't go to them very often because I live like 4 hours away. Mm-hmm. But I think Steve probably went to several of those parties, I think.
Various parties. I can't remember what all the occasions were, if they were 4th of July or other things. So Ryan was one of those incredible connectors of creative people. Yes. And he really, I would say, was the creative salon of the day in Atlanta. And you always knew there were going to be interesting folks if you showed up in Ryan's garden.
Nice. And how did you meet him in the beginning? Were you doing any work for him, or was it just sort of a circle of creative people, Robert?
Well, I met him at the High. I was doing a shoot at the High Museum, and he was doing something. I don't know what he was doing, but he walked by and said he wanted to hire me to shoot some of his stuff. And I thought, here's some crazy man here. So I gave him my phone number, but I dismissed it. And then he kept calling every day. And then he sent me flowers. It was the first time I ever got flowers from a man. Aww. And then he finally convinced me to do a shoot with them, and then I didn't think he was crazy. And then we became fast friends after that, actually.
Oh, I love that.
Well, and Robert, we should really clarify. Monica introduced you with all your various ranges of talent, which is true. When I think of you, I think of as an artist. But your continuous medium that a lot of people have known you from, or I guess, is your photography. Is that correct?
Yes, that's true. Yes, that's true. I started out in the art world as a photographer, and then moved to design work. So.
And did you study graphic design or illustration? Because is a lot of that illustration your work, or had you hired on illustrators to sort of visualize what you wanted?
Both, and both. There's one designer that did a lot of stuff in the very beginning. It was Christina Sands, and then when we couldn't get a hold of her, I would do some, and then we used a couple different illustrators as well.
Because the illustrations are gorgeous, and then there's also some beautiful watercolors that you dug up, Steve.
Robert, you have attended some of the really good art schools, as I remember.
Undergraduate, I was biology. I wasn't really in the arts.
Okay.
And then when I finished school, I studied in France and stuff, and came back and decided I would give photography a go. So that was my introduction to the arts. And then I did go back to, I got an MFA from Art Center in Pasadena, California. And then when I quit that, I didn't touch photography for 10 years. All I did is design work. But now I do both. Now I go back and forth and do both design and photography.
And didn't you go to an art school in Paris, or am I remembering something?
No. I went to Parsons School of Design in Paris.
Oh, lovely. That sounds wonderful.
You're always so modest, Robert.
So I
can tell you, I can tell you one thing. Working with Steve was a pivoting point. When they first asked me they wanted a logo or a brand, and it's kind of hard to brand a community, and I never really understood how that could be done. So it was very much of a collaborative thing, and graphics and product design is mainly what I had done. And then after we did that, and we kind of ebbed and flowed and did a lot of different things. And then Steve asked me to design the lights. And that was a really changing point in my degree. And it really kind of moved me more into industrial design. And that was a huge risk on Steve too, because I'd never designed anything like that. And I was petrified. And we even had some moments. I can remember Steve and I went down to the foundry because we did all kinds of mock-ups and scales. And we went, and Steve was spending a lot of money on these lights. And I don't remember if you remember, Steve, but we met at the foundry to look at the lights. And we both said, this is going to be awful or this is going to be great. And it was kind of scary because he was spending so much money on these lights, and we were hoping it was going to be great, but we didn't know.
I remember that day so well. And so that everyone sort of follows through this whole thing. But I think before the foundry story, we have to remember when you arrived here with your pickup and a paper mache mock-up model of the street light.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, oh my goodness, are we sure we're headed in the right direction? And it wasn't the graceful end result that you all see today, but it was Robert's paper mache in the back of his pickup, and we're modifying that. Robert's out there pulling and pushing it. And so finally we thought we were okay. And so Robert found this wonderful foundry just over the state line in Alabama.
Okay.
And so, Robert had lots of conversations. There were pictures. Robert had been adjusting. And so this was our first day to see it. And we walked in, and there it is, this street light, but in a total big shed. And it was sort of standing there all by itself, and it looked huge. And we were both sort of silent, and then we looked at each other, and we both had that feeling that Robert just described. Oh my God!
Like, what have we done? Did that become the original?
That was the first. That was it.
Wow!
This was all sorts of mock-ups and clay that Robert had done to get us to this point. This was a whole process, and I don't know. You did several different models in different mediums, Robert. It wasn't just the paper mache one, but this was the real thing, really committed.
out of metal. Very expensive.
This had been cast, and we had a contract to do several, and this was just the sign off on the first one where we could still adapt. And I remember then it came back here and it was installed, and I was still very nervous.
Yes,
and
I was too.
Today, the trees have grown up around it, but along the streets, they sort of stood out.
Which one was the first one?
And the first one was the one up at Lot 5, I think. Wasn't it, Robert? Just as you came into the community.
Very first one,
as you come into the community.
Into the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And I still was nervous. And so that first morning, I remember stopping one of the construction people, and I said, "What do you think about the street light?" And he was standing about 20 feet from it, and he said, "What street light?" And I said, "Okay, it blends with the trees, but it stands out when you see it." And that's exactly it. It was a point of genius, Robert. I mean, you really brought something forward that expressed that we felt arts were important, and that we were not an average community, and you really brought that forth. And I know you had several sketches that we chose from and some wild things, but today it's a significant piece that really sets the tone for Serenbe.
It is. It's like part tree, part Dr. Seuss, and then this lovely lyrical hanging trail of lights that kind of tangles through it. I mean, I don't know how you guys created it. It is fantastic. And again, you're right. Some people walk through and I'm like, oh, you got to wait at night until they see the streetlights. They're like, what streetlights? So what they blend in, but then once they see them, you can't forget them.
And so Robert's fingerprint is all over Serenbe. And we have asked Robert to continue to design the streetlights for each community that reinforces the intent for the commercial focus. So in Selborne, that is the arts.
Yep.
In the Crossroads, which is reminiscent of communities in the 1800s, Robert designed a gas lantern.
Yep.
And it was a custom-made gas lantern. And then in Grange, that was modified to be an electrified lantern. And it was so simple, but so unique that the company that we contracted to do it has named it the Serenbe Light.
Yes.
And then there's Motto. And Robert, want to share your vision for bringing forth the street light in Motto?
Well, yeah, it was kind of the same thing. I really liked No One Restall, the first street lights, so I didn't want really them to stand out. I wanted them to blend again, but at night I wanted to have a more playful effect of the light. So I wanted people to really see the effect of the light, but not really the light itself. So that's why we did these. And it was, again, a simple design, but somehow it was hard for us to find people to actually manufacture and make it. I was surprised how hard it was to find someone to actually make those.
And those what are they out of? Are they out of aluminum, or what are they out of, Robert? What's the material?
Yes, they're made out of aluminum. Everything we've done before has either been steel or stainless steel, and I really wanted to use aluminum because it oxidizes white, and I just like the cleanness of what Motto represents. And it's like over time, as they oxidize and just turn to that ashy white color, I think it'll even be more and more what Motto is and represents Motto.
And whose idea was it to put the flowers or leaf shapes? Sort of, it's not a cutout. What's the actual technical term when you?
It's a laser
cut. So they're laser cut leaves and flowers. I'm asking.
Well, there's three different designs that we've done so far. We've taken the white oak leaf that is all throughout Serenbe, and we took a honeysuckle design. Those globes are a honeysuckle, and then the other ones are a fern, which all come from the land around Serenbe things are found there.
I love it. And you've just installed a few more, Steve, yes?
We have. We're constantly, we have now 5 that are illuminated. And then we'll build to probably about 26 in all of Motto. Robert's now working on some other things. For instance, the paths that take you across the Motto Pond garden, and some interesting things there yet to happen. Ooh. And then, of course, in Motto, because it is so dense, there are other areas where there's lighting that corresponds.
Right.
For instance, the globes in Andrews Square, the globes in Andrews Square are very unique. And Robert, I think you've won a national award on those, haven't you?
Yep. The Architectural International Design, I think, won a bronze award.
Great. Congratulations.
Yep.
It's well worth it. Those are
Thank
also
you.
stunning at night. Just lights up. They're sort of sitting within these arches under a sidewalk way. And it hangs from a blue ceiling that I want to say it's almost Moroccan, but I don't know if that's quite the accurate feel, but it's so beautiful. And then the light, the cutouts show that light of all across the sidewalk of those flowers or fern shapes. So kind of a really phenomenal experience in the evening.
It kind of reminds me of like a wallpaper. That's the kind of one.
Yeah, that's a great
description.
description. Robert, I know that you also sort of would curate different artists. Steve would be looking to do a piece, which I believe the glass leaves was also something that you concepted. When you step up the wooden staircase to our office, there's a sign and beautiful, what I think are glass leaves that are sort of made sculpturally into a sign that says Serenbe, I believe.
That's right.
Was that, where do you find these artists, or have you created a collective? Like, where are all these people coming from?
Well, just like Ryan was a big collective. I mean, most of them are his friends that are acquaintance. But every time I see an artist that does something incredible, you want to work with them and collaborate with them. So I'm always reaching out to different artists, and she seemed like a good fit. And so we did some leaves, and they worked out nicely. I feel like.
Do you remember what her name is?
Yes, it was Donna Branch, and she's a pretty well-known glass artist. She does cast glass. She's never done stuff like leaves before. A lot of her stuff is very precise, but she's a pretty well-known glass artist.
Okay,
she's from Birmingham.
And then the other thing that we touched on at the beginning is the box, right? The original marketing materials box. That's beautifully done, has a cast acorn and a branch that pulls out a little drawer, and then there's a quote that's sort of carved into it, as well as this beautiful, piece of collateral. That, I think, must have been a very collaborative effort. But can you guys, Steve and Robert, can you talk about that experience and how that came to be?
Yeah, I mean, well, first I want to talk about that everything that Serenbe has done has been a white oak leaf and a white oak. But when I first did the design, and Steve, you may remember that little box that we sent out. That was the first thing that we ever did. And I was working with Ryan. I really wasn't working with Steve that much. It was mainly Ryan was proving everything, and so we were almost halfway through with it. And I had used a red oak leaf and a red oak acorn because it had really sharp points on the leaves, and I really liked the way it looked. And I can remember I just had a brass cast die hand carved with this red oak, and I showed it to Ryan, and he was like, "That's all wrong. It should be the white oak. It's the masculine and the feminine coming together, and the red oak is too much of the male." And so I had to go back and redesign, and we had to recarve that hand cast first acorn. Do you remember that, Steve? I don't even know if you knew that.
Well, I do. And this was, this is such a multi-dimensional conversation that really happens because Serenbe is about that blend between the masculine and the feminine. It comes about with various artists that have worked here and various things. And so this brings it about. Plus, the land is covered with white oak.
Right. So it makes more sense.
Yeah. And so it really follows. And the acorn, the whole idea is we realized that we were presenting a seed of new thought as far as community development. And so in the early years, we really led with the acorn. And now that has emerged into trees and other things and is still emerging.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, because I think that was part of the branding, the strategy when we first started, that there wasn't going to be a brand, like one thing that was going to stay constant. As the community grows, the branding goes away and the community is. So we started off with acorn, like I said. Anyway, so we hand casted branches and acorns for that box. And Audwin, I used a friend of mine who does live casting, and so he helped me do those. And I had another friend of mine who did. And white oak is so hard and heavy. If you look at that box, it's super heavy.
It is.
Steve had to ship those things around. I'm sure it cost a fortune. And some people couldn't even open the box. We had to have instructions on how to open it because it was. But that's what I wanted. I wanted this to be a block of wood that would people could actually play with, and you can open it several different ways and experience it several different ways.
But Robert, you created an entire line of things because we realized we were in the middle of a forest that had no branding, and we had everything people touched or saw. It had to indicate that we were doing something special.
Yes.
And you and Ryan brought forth an entire line. So the box Robert referred to it's a small, beautiful invitation box to the charrette with the Rocky Mountain Institute in September of 2000. And that was the first piece that went out. And we had, 100% acceptance because how could you not come to something that was this special?
Right.
And we can get pictures of that and put it up. And it wasn't just the box, it was how it was packaged, how it was mailed, and how it arrived. And Robert, I run into people, now 15, 20 years later that share with me, they still have some of our original collateral because it was so simple and so elegant at the same time. There's the wonderful piece you did in corrugated cardboard and a rusted screen, and you open it up, and it is such simple materials and so elegant at the same time. It was just incredible, and then some of the collateral, and you did the pouch that was all burlap pouch for us to mail it, and everything you touched was just beautifully elegant and simple.
Yeah. Well, because we had to use every tool we could since such in town and touch. I remember those first boxes that we sent out. They weren't meant to last. I'm sure for some of the because we hinged them with white oak leaves and beeswax. So when you open the box, they kind of fell apart, but the aroma of the sweet beeswax and the tree leaves were all part of that. The smell and the touch of the box as you opened it up.
Oh, that's so thoughtful. It's so incredible.
Oh, every level of it is thoughtful. I mean, Robert thinks in depths of creativity.
Right. And so the other thing that I think is interesting when you walk around, and I still admire it every day, is the benches and the trash cans and the surround around the stop sign. Am I missing anything else? The bike racks are all branches that sort of surround the arms or surround the stop sign, or, even the trash cans I can't really even explain because I don't know really if I've ever really talked about great trash cans, but these are great trash cans. It's like branches all the way around it, and you've got recycling on one side and regular trash on the other.
We could take a picture of them.
Yeah. Tell me, was that something also, that you really wanted to put a stake in the ground on?
Oh, absolutely. Well, everything had to be creative. I mean, we were establishing the fact that we were saying we honored the arts, and we wanted to move forward in practice in commissioning artists, primarily Robert, to design these things, and then employing craftsmen to execute it. And so it was several messages we were trying to send with this very thing.
Yeah. No, they're beautiful. And Robert, have you ever had anybody ask you, like, what was your sort of Steve Nygren, like this crazy man who wants you to design trash cans? Or tell me, what was sort of your experience? Or at that point, had you worked with him enough that you knew, oh, this is just what he's going to want me to do?
No, I mean, I kind of knew of Steve before I knew Ryan really well. So Steve was kind of an extension of that. And then as I got to know Steve even more, he was even more freeing to design with. I mean, Steve and I have had our arguments about things, but they've always bettered the design, I think.
Sure.
They've always kind of, because he sees a different side than I do, and it's good to see both sides of things. So yeah, I guess I've been I guess the lights were the biggest surprise that he asked me to design, because he took a big risk with that, But no, the trash cans, I mean, I really had a good time with those. And it's not really, I feel like it was my design. I feel like I was just kind of going with the most obvious of what they needed. I mean, it's the white oak tree and the branches, and why would you not do that? It wasn't, I don't think it's really innovative of me. It's just like, that's what was needed. And so that's what Steve got.
Well, and Robert, almost every day when I hand my business card to someone, I'm reminded of your creativity, because it has great reactions when people see the business card. And that was all your idea, to have that flap that...
Right, the die cut with the acorn. Yeah, people absolutely love them. Like, that is something that we will never change. Doesn't matter what kind of branding we redo. Those cards are forever part of the brand. It's beautiful.
Well, that's cool.
So, Robert, tell us a little bit about Alabama. And had you been there when you were shooting photography once you were done with Parsons and Art Center in Pasadena? Did you immediately land in Alabama? Did you grow up there, or why Alabama versus Atlanta?
Well, no, actually, I thought of it, Atlanta. Well, I was living in L.A., and I was in L.A. for, I don't know, a long time, like 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And I started having kids. And my first two kids were actually born in Los Angeles, and I didn't want them to grow up in California. So we moved back to Alabama because my parents lived here. And then our other two boys that we had were born in Tennessee, and I really love the South. I've always felt really home in the South. I love the food. I love the way people think, and it's cheap. It's really cheap. So when I was working a lot in Nashville and Atlanta, and both of those, and we're kind of right in between those two cities. And I really did think, and I think Steve even knows, I was even thinking about getting a place down at Serenbe as well. But my parents live here, and we just had our farm was here, so it was hard for us to pull away. And then when the kids started growing up here, there's no way we were going to pull them away.
Sure.
And now you're teaching at college level courses in art.
Yes, I teach at the University of Alabama. I think one of the biggest reasons why we ended staying here, and I think Natalie's done some stuff over at Serenbe as well. I met these incredible other artists that just moved to our small town at the same time that I did, and that really grounded me here as well, because we have a pretty creative community here. It's pretty small, but it's a good community.
What's the community called, Robert?
Florence, Alabama.
Florence, yeah, of course. So that's interesting. So tell us a little bit about how Florence has changed over the years, and what it is, why you find that people are drawn to it.
Well, we have Natalie and Billy Reed here, which are two international, clothing designers here. Mm-hmm. We have a guy that raises animals for shows for TV and film. We have a lot of strange niche little creative people here, and the food has really come a long way. There weren't places to eat here that were really good, but the food has really changed a lot. It's kind of a thriving little art and that's community now, and that's all happened in the last probably 10 years.
Oh, so cool. Anything that you're working on right now that you particularly want to share with us that you think is a lot of fun that's outside of Serenbe?
That's outside of Serenbe. I'm designing a book for a celebrity photographer in LA right now. We're doing stuff in our town. I'm refacing some of the buildings downtown that have been repurposed, but honestly, I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to Steve, but working on the next lights with him are really fun as well.
Oh, good! I'm very excited to see that. I wonder if we have any sketches that, if you're ready to share, Steve, maybe we can put them out on the website in the first quarter. Well, Robert, anything else you want to share? Any fun stories we don't know about Steve that will entertain us?
I probably have a lot, but I'm not sure I would want to fill them out here. No, I think Steve and Marie have just said, I've learned so much from them, and they're very holistic way of thinking about not just design, but just all of life.
Yeah.
And that's, I've always asked Steve, why do you think he's so successful? Because he's done the two hardest things, the things that people say don't ever do. He was in the restaurant industry, and he's in land, and everyone says don't do those two things. So I always ask him, and I always pick his brain. And he's told me before that he just feels like he's he inspires people to do what they do, and he's really good at picking. And I think that's underestimated, but it's interesting that he feels like that's his role. He's definitely inspired me, and I feel like I am a different designer for designing with him as well. And his whole family. The fact that all of his family, all of his kids work with him says a lot. I don't think you have to say anything else about that.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point.
That's the biggest compliment you can have.
Big compliment.
Well, Robert, it's amazing to think that we're approaching 20 years that we've known each other or worked together. Actually, I met you before that, but really didn't know you. But we're approaching 20 years that we had that first box that was the invitation to the charrette in September of 2000.
It's crazy
how quickly time has gone.
It goes by fast.
I know.
I can remember the first time you had a bunch of people down there, and I can't remember what it was, but we're walking through the woods, and you just cut a path and sowed some seeds, and you're walking down, and you're telling everybody, and the homes are going to be here, and this is going to be here, and everyone's like looking like, what? This is just woods. But the way you talked about it, I could tell that in your eyes, you actually were seeing everything done and finished. And it was interesting to see someone work like that. You could see it.
Continues to be a gift and a curse, right? I'm never satisfied that the actual material isn't there. And Robert, I always think of the first photograph, because then, of course, Robert's main medium was thought of as photography. And so we commissioned Robert to do some of the first photographs. With these street lights, which were just sitting here and the street, and no one had really moved in.
Yeah.
The buildings were just completed enough. They were just finished, and we could get that. And so Robert came down, and we spent the evening getting every bush manicured and everything. So the lights and the doors, and we're going to turn all the lights on because the buildings were lights.
Sure.
And so I think at maybe midnight, we decided it was good, and we got a little bit of sleep, and Robert wanted to have the sun coming up to catch the right light. And so we get up at sunup, and we walk out, and there is a car parked on the street that had arrived after midnight. And we were just like, oh my gosh, who is that? And it turns out Chip and Raina, who everyone here knows, had closed on their townhouse that day, and they decided to bring an air mattress and sleep in their new townhouse. And so I was ready to knock on the door at 5 a.m. and say, move your car. And Robert said, no, I can handle it.
Oh, I love it.
So every time I see that picture, every now and then I'm looking at that picture and I think, people do not realize that you photoshopped a car out of that image.
Maybe we can find that. Well, Robert, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for everything you've contributed to Serenbe. It just continues to give back every day. Absolute delight as somebody who lives here to be surrounded by all of your art.
Thanks, Robert, for memorizing.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, thank you for remembering all these stories, and while this is going to be shared now with our listeners, this is going to go in the archives so that people can come back and remember. And truly, Robert, your fingerprint is on every piece of Serenbe and everything we do. And thank you for your creativity and putting up with some of the struggles we've had getting some of these things done. But I agree with you. It's always come out to be the more creative and things we can actually build. Sometimes I've worried some of the things Robert brings that we can't build them, but clearly the streetlight was indication you can, because when I saw that first paper mache, I thought we'll never be able to get anybody to do this.
Well, it is truly an honor and a privilege to get to work with you, Stephen. I've really enjoyed it and learned a lot for myself.
Thank you, Robert, and I look forward to the next 20 years of creativity with you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Me too.
Thanks, Robert. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Y'all as well. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Serenbe Stories. New episodes are available on Mondays. Please rate and review the podcast, and make sure to email your questions for Steve Nygren to stories@serenbe.com. You may even get to hear them on the podcast. More details about episodes and guests are available on our website, serenbestories.com.